I
All
just
right.
got to plug
All
it up
right.
real quick.
The email got sent out.
Yes, that's great. I'm ready.
All right. So here we are on a live stream, Substack live stream with Jeremy Fox, the
Yeah.
illustrious,
Thank you.
um, as you all know from prior recordings, podcasts, and so forth. And I'm Dr. Paul for both Romantopedia, Men's Psychology, and others. Looks like we have Ray joined in, Tiff. Feel free to shoot questions or comments as we go along. Geraldine, of course. And Jeremy and I had an idea to just suddenly get on impulsively right now to talk about kind of an interesting topic, just spur some conversation. I had an experience this past week where I published two articles in a major magazine, and it was interesting. The first one was given kind of premier status, but then this other article hopped in ahead of it about actually an old nemesis of mine, Helen Fisher, uh, formerly the chief of chemistry.com, a dating website. And she is or was an anthropologist. I was not aware that she has passed on. Um, she had a lot of things to say about love, but as an anthropologist, she worked on trying to develop algorithms and essentially how to scientize matchmaking in a way is what she was tasked with this dating site that she did. And this writer, basically wrote about her ideas, and I wasn't completely aware of the nature of the personality styles or personality typing system that she had developed for herself, which was very biologically based. And when I read this person's article, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to respond to this because I mean, I'd love that people are thinking this way and thinking about this and trying to develop different personality style typing systems other than the big five, which is, of course, the best and most accurate. But what it was based on was I was just shocked to see that it was based on one personality is serotonin based, another one is dopamine based, a third one is testosterone based, a hormone that is higher in almost all males as compared to the average female, and estrogen based, which is higher in females than almost all males. And I just immediately, I mean, I had to kind of slap myself in the forehead and say, "Wait a minute, am I thinking correctly?" To immediately recognize this as totally erroneous, because it would imply if there is a personality style purely based just in testosterone, that basically at least 66% of males, one standard deviation, if not all males, must have this one personality style, which obviates the whole idea of having a personality style typing system. Why would you even have one?
Yeah.
And all females are at least 66% or a standard deviation of females worldwide and throughout human history would all have this other personality style, actually leaving the other two personality styles out in the cold. I mean, I couldn't believe my eyes. And it reminded me of a system that I developed that I don't think I've ever explained to Jeremy, which is, one reason I wanted to talk to him about this in front of you guys.
Here we go.
Um, yeah, here we go.
We're
And
launching it. First time. First time hearing it. Live reaction video from me.
all right, amazing. But let me kind of dive into this, and I want to see what you think. Like, first time you've heard this, Jeremy, you don't know this about me as my one of my first public um, publicly proclaimed models or theories from over 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Many years ago, I read the book for men by Moore and Gillette, the Jungian psychologists, called
Okay.
King Warrior Magician Lover.
Yes.
And I like the names a lot. In fact, I probably have done more for their publicity than they did,
Probably.
because I borrowed the names because they were just so descriptive of a spectrum of, not really one spectrum, but a quadrant system of four personalities,
Okay.
that the names were male sounding names. And although these two authors were writing about males and from Jungian psychological terms, I immediately thought, wait a minute, these names don't have to be just about men's um, archetypes or men's styles of doing things. These could just as easily be female.
Right.
In terms of, I've known in my life numerous female warriors, really tough ladies. I've known even more female magicians, very creative, artistic, action taking females who are gifted at public performance and chief of sales of companies and are socialites and things like this, female magicians. And of course, I've known many female lovers, meaning like a female poet, a fine artist,
Right.
somebody who's a writer, who's has a big heart, and they could be female or male. And I've known many males who are lovers, males who are magicians, who are the life of the
Right.
party, males who are warriors, who are tough guys, and males who are kings. But what about queens? So I thought there must be queens as well as kings,
Right.
and that this Moore and Gillette book really just as easily could be describing a four quadrant system of personality as it could male archetypes. So from
Agreed.
there, I started wondering about these terms, and I ended up changing the name of my system because people got confused that I was a Jungian psychologist and that I was just promoting Moore and Gillette's book, and they got
Right.
confused. So I renamed it something sensible. Started calling it the social personality system and social personality styles. Why social? Because instead of looking at an individual in a vacuum for how do they think, how do they feel in isolation, I felt that these personality styles could be used to describe how people form friendships, how they form alliances, how they fit together in groups, how an abundance of one type more than another would change the dynamics of a group. So I wanted to call it social something. So social personality styles is what I trademarked it as. And here's how it works. Instead of there being what Helen Fisher in the article I mentioned called a a director, which is in my parlance a warrior, which she
Right.
based on testosterone. And instead of calling it, in her parlance, a negotiator, which in my parlance would be a lover,
Okay.
based on, in her world, estrogen. And instead of a builder, that was the other one, a king or a queen in Helen Fisher's typography is a builder. In my system, it would be a king or a queen, and she bases that on serotonin. And then lastly, for me, I call it a magician, borrowing from Moore and Gillette's terminologies. She called I think an explorer, maybe an explorer, and she said that was based in dopamine, like a novelty seeking person loves dopamine. Well,
Yes.
see that, so that and then I want to stop and let you react, Jeremy, before I explain like how my system works and how it's useful and practical.
Yeah.
But I first wanted to say, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because I never really studied her stuff in depth. But to say that serotonin is entirely responsible for a personality style is like saying a depressed person suddenly has a new kind of personality because their
Yeah.
serotonin's low, or
Yeah.
all of us are dopamine enjoying creatures, because we love winning a prize or we love graduating high school or college. We love getting married. We have a high in life, and that's the
Yes.
dopamine high. Does that mean our personality has now changed? Because personality is a rather durable concept. It
Yes.
can change. It's somewhat malleable, slightly malleable,
Right. But doesn't often. Right.
but it's slow as as molasses in terms of, to use an old man term. It's very slow to change, like,
Yeah.
in terms of years, not minutes or days or
Yes.
even months. You don't
Well, yeah,
change
I
your
agree with you.
personality in a month.
Well, or therapy wouldn't really be necessary at that point, would it? I mean, so Sophie's in the chat here too, who I tagged you in for the stuff about like the
Nice.
men liking certain anatomy up top or down bottom, so to speak. That was an interesting study, by the way. Love that stuff. I love the when people start doing massive studies and things. So yeah, Sophie. So Dr. Dobransky basically took the typology of the magician, king, lover, warrior, and took it from being masculine only, and then made it more personality for women and men, which I think is a lot better. So essentially, I agree. First of all, what you're saying. I told a client today at my practice, like about the serotonergic cleft theory, like is now being explored. Like, is that actually what's happening? There's now a whole reevaluation of even that idea of how SSRIs and antidepressants work. It's all theoretical, and some of the theory is very shaky. So the fact of the matter is, even metaphorically, we're on shaky ground just referring to these chemicals as these monolithic kind of like, this is the chemical, and it's when you give a medicine, this is what happens. There makes more. You know what I'm saying? Like that stuff's being reassessed.
Well, as it should be, because
Yeah,
all
agreed.
four chemicals are in all of us. We all have estrogen, testosterone, dopamine, and serotonin.
Right.
And what is the point of dividing those four things in all of us? I mean, I just didn't get it.
I like it. I
So let
think.
me.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say. I think the big five comes into play here too, right? Because you can have men who are more agreeable and women who are more disagreeable. You can have men who are more neurotic and less, women who are more neurotic and less. And so I think you can, as is the case a lot with that very robust model, a lot collapses into that just four personality styles may probably don't, like, just bluntly said. And we continue. Yeah.
Okay, then I will. um,
Amazing.
and responding to Sophie, I heard this typology floating around, but never knew you were behind it. Well, yeah, I probably was, because Moore and Gillette did not apply their ideas to personality styles or typing systems or matchmaking.
Right.
That comes from the mid to late '90s and early 2000s when I was involved in that and erroneously used their terminologies, and then people got confused that I was them and so forth.
Yeah.
Let me just say that I don't want to bash, you know, Ms. Fisher anymore about this. That's pointless. But I do want to say that scientific accuracy and truth is important to me. And I
Yeah.
don't like people being misled by giant marketing schemes and campaigns. Um, One thing that you may find interesting, say that you weren't even a psychologist or a therapist or a behavioral health person, and you wanted to just develop your own personality typing system.
Right.
You could, like astrology, for example. You could do
Yeah.
it.
You
You could
could.
do it. And I'll tell you the quick study how to do it. If the definition of personality is almost always accepted by most of the defining bodies, dictionaries, encyclopedias, Wikipedia, APA, etc., as being one's communication style and behavioral style
Mhm.
that is somewhat predictive over time of how a person's going to communicate and how they're going to behave. That's personality. Now, I've seen a lot of
Yes.
bogus definitions, random blogs saying that it's what you want to be, and it's who you really,
Aspirational.
it's your
No, yeah,
aspirational who you are. No, if
it's
we want to
behavior.
be accurate in science, we need to agree on some kind of useful definition that is repeatable and reliable. And most of what I've
Bingo.
seen in 30 years of practice is that personality is one's unique, um, in a cohort, style of communication and style of behavior that is somewhat predictive of future communication and behavior.
Love it. Let
If
me
that's, go ahead. Yeah.
no, let me throw this in really quick. I love that. I actually heard it referenced as an affect management system as well, like how you manage emotions. And I thought that was very interesting because you can look at people who are more or less neurotic. You can say, like, if somebody manages emotion by trying to get others to soothe it, or if they isolate and try to self-soothe when they're anyway. I thought that was affect management system is a cool term for personality that I had read in an article, like that was a theoretical article about. Anyway, continue on. This
Okay,
is great.
well, certainly there's affect to it. There is that which is emotional, and I would say that which is cognitive.
Absolutely,
There's thoughts and emotions, and guess what? Both males and females have thoughts and emotions. So
absolutely.
I actually don't believe that gender or biologic sex ought to be factored into personality. It's way more useful that way, and especially in the area of matchmaking people. If you're
Yes,
going to matchmake people who are also going to feel desire or sexual attraction for each other, then
yes,
leave that out. Leave that as its own department of romance. And let's talk about love and friendship instead of just desire and sex. Love and
I like
friendship.
that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now, a lot of people wouldn't agree with me. They would say, no, let's factor in biological sex tendencies or instincts or archetypes or style. I say
yeah,
no, because half the planet is one and the other half is the other. Why would we even want to mix that binary into personality? We want personality to be descriptive and provide us some kind of friendship and romantic matchmaking ability. That being said, back to could you make your own personality typing system like Sophie is saying she's doing this? Yes,
cool.
absolutely, you could. Anyone could with zero education. Here's how you would do it: take a spectrum that you devise that's very descriptive of a giant range of human communication style, and take a giant range of human behavior style and simply periodically label locations on these spectra, give them names, and there you are. You have your own personality typing system. That's all
Right.
you need to do. Describe a range of human behavior and give names to certain points in the human behavior where you're going to divide people into cohorts. You could call it the hair color personality style system and say brunettes have these communication characteristics, and blondes have these characteristics, and redheads have these communication characteristics. You would need to
Right.
make sure that it is true for all redheads that they do indeed communicate that way. But
Yeah.
if you're only about marketing and not at all about science, you could forget about that and just call it the hairstyle, hair color typing system. And you could make a big name for yourself and write a book about it and have a personality typing system, the same as astrology works. So, unfortunately, last word on this. Unfortunately, that system I mentioned that uses serotonin and dopamine and estrogen and testosterone, Doesn't make any sense because it's doing exactly that. It's like saying a redhead has testosterone and a brunette has estrogen and a blonde is full of serotonin. That's all it's doing. It's just arbitrarily assigning a name to a category of behavior and communication.
Sure.
Instead of doing that, what I did 25 years ago and still persist in is I looked at the two domains that define personality. One is intellectual style, the other is emotional style. Intellectual style was easy to devise a spectrum for because we've all heard of left brain versus right brain, quote, dominance. And even though it's now disproven that your actual left hemisphere of your brain does certain things and the right hemisphere does other things,
Right.
it is true that the human brain's ability to cognitively process is a dual processing unit. Its processing is both analytical and historical, a sense of history or past, and
Right.
simultaneously it is fractal and branched, chained, and this is right brained and future oriented and predictive about possibilities. So our brains might be the very thing that invents the concept of time. The notion of time having a past and a future might
Mhm.
be a unique contribution of us having a two hemisphere brain or at least a dual processing brain, left brain and right brain. Everyone you've ever known in your life, including yourself, has been has spent more of their time intellectually being at least more analytical or more creative and spontaneous and disorganized, either more
Right.
organized or more disorganized with their use of data. We all have a style, and it's almost like a probability wave where it's not precisely exactly on a specific line, but
Right.
we've spent the average of our time more on one type of processing than the other. So there are more left-brained people and more right-brained people for sure. The artists, salespeople, musicians, uh, funny comedic people that you've known are certainly more right-brained over time throughout their life. The more accounting oriented money people who are analytical, studious scholars of organized thought are going to be the more left-brained people. So that's an easy linear spectrum. The
Right.
harder spectrum that I believe those aforementioned did not figure out and couldn't and just randomly attributed hormones and neurotransmitters to is the emotional spectrum. How would you
Right.
figure out there being an emotional style spectrum? And the reason I'm saying intellect and emotion is that all communication has two general components. It's data, but it's data conveyed with an emotional timbre to it. If I say, Jeremy, we need to talk,
Right.
that has one meaning. But if I say, Jeremy, we need to talk,
Yes.
doesn't that have an entirely different meaning? Even though
Entirely
it's
different meaning.
exactly the same data, the same words,
Tone.
it has a different emotional timbre.
Yes.
And so emotion matters in communication, and obviously it matters in behavior, as does
Mhm.
the intellect. Therefore, the two most logical spectra to define personality would not be hormonal, neurotransmitter, sex hormones, and things like this. It would be an intellectual spectrum that makes sense and an emotional spectrum that makes sense. For the
Right.
emotional spectrum, where I pulled that from 25 years ago was I was in psychoanalytic training. I was learning about what they called mother transference and father transference. And mother transference was seeing your mother in a person, like a therapist, for example, and feeling similar feelings, or father transference, seeing your father in a relationship or in your therapy, and it feels like your dad. That's a transference. And I noticed that the research was starting to evolve at the time, showing that children's outcomes into adulthood fare far better when there are two parents in their
Yes.
lives. And it became well known that children need a source of both that which is maternal and that which is paternal. They need both, even if they're getting it only from a single mom. If they're getting both mothering and fathering from a single mom, fine. If they're getting both mothering and fathering from a single dad, fine. If they're getting
Right.
both from two separate parents, fine. But they need both types of transference and
Yes.
parenting. So,
Absolutely.
so cut 2.5 decades to today, and there's starting to be research talking about quantifying and qualifying what they are calling well-being and self-esteem. And there's
Yes.
also some research, lesser so, but some research about confidence as a definable emotional trait. I have come to believe, and it plays out in vivo in people,
Right.
that there are two types of self-esteem, not hormones, not neurotransmitters, but the psychological, an energy. So there is a physicality to it, and perhaps a biology to it, and maybe it's mediated by dopamine and norepinephrine and serotonin and testosterone and estrogen and like 50 other mediators. Just
Right.
like electricity in your home doesn't determine how your home is wired, it just happens to have electricity. These are just mediators. But I think what they would mediate would be the psychological concept of self esteem, which divides into two types. And I think the two types are well being, which is a sense of nourishment or being fed or one's needs being met.
Right.
Like when we say we're hangry, we're both hungry and angry. We're
Right.
lacking that which is maternal. We're needing to be fed. So well-being is low for that person who is hungry. Well-being is high for a person who is satisfied, who has satisfaction. Their needs are met. The other type of self-esteem we can't do without, I would say, is a more paternal, whether it comes from a male or a female parent, doesn't matter, but it's more paternal in that it is encouragement such that you develop confidence. And how would you
Right.
define confidence as a self esteem type? It would be the ability to tolerate risk, change, loss, and uncertainty and still function. Confidence, emotionally, is a type of self esteem that is the ability to tolerate risk, change, loss, and uncertainty and still function.
Right.
So, confidence and well being are the two poles of the emotional spectrum of personality. Now we
Yes.
cross the spectra. We have the intellect as the x-axis, we have the emotions as the y-axis. The x-axis runs from left brain to right brain. The y-axis runs from well-being, maternal, to
Yes.
confidence, paternal. Now
Right.
we have four quadrants, just like Helen Fisher liked, um, and just like numerous people that make four quadrant personality typing systems, like the disc system, the color wheel system, all these various systems.
Yes.
But these are the real variables. So now we have a left brain person who is full of well being and good at giving it to others. That would be a king or a queen. A king or a queen is caring for their subjects. That's why I like the Moore and Gillette Jungian terminologies for these names, because they're very descriptive of both the emotion and the intellect. But an organized, analytical, nurturing person full of well being is a king or a queen. Who is their exact opposite? This gets to romance and matchmaking. We want a well balanced couple that brings everything necessary to the table emotionally and intellectually to be a
Right.
team, to get a good functioning team would have all the necessary resources to be a team. So a king or a queen is perfectly matched to a magician. The opposite,
Yes.
a right-brained, confident person, like an actor or chief of sales, somebody who's in the public eye, a public speaker, someone who doesn't mind a crowd. In fact, they love an audience and they love applause from an audience. The star of the show is the magician. A right brained, confident person is a perfect match for a left brained, full of well being, nurturing person. Just like in the movie When Harry Met Sally, all these old couples. I was the life of the party. She was the bookworm. Together, we were a perfect team. They were opposites. They're always
Yeah.
opposites in these
Yeah. Yeah.
lasting
Yeah.
couples. The other match are the other two quadrants. The left-brained, um, lower lower left quadrant. The left-brained confident person is the warrior, analytical, targeted, precise, but action taking. Extroverted,
Yes.
perhaps, but action taking is the confident, emotional person who's left brain. That's a warrior. Their perfect opposite is the right brain, nurturing, full of well being person, the lover. So in Helen Fisher's system, negotiator is lover. It's not based in estrogen. Otherwise, every single female on the planet would be a negotiator, which they're
Right.
not. Um, Instead, it's a right brained, it could be a male. It's a right brain nurturing person. That's a lover. Helen Fisher's builder is a left brain nurturing person. She thinks it's based on serotonin. It's not. It's based on the well being type of self esteem and being left brain. That's a king or a queen. The director is the director's the warrior. The builder is the king or queen. The director's the warrior. That's the outgoing, confident, left brain person. And finally, the magician, in her parlance, the explorer is a right brain, confident person in what I just described to you. But to her, it's a dopamine addict. So so that's the difference. Instead of using hormones and neurotransmitters, stay in your own
Yeah.
lane. let's let's talk about the psychology of personality and the real components of the psychology of it, that through which you can indeed match make people to be a very good team together in
Yeah.
friendship and love, the friendship phase of romance. So that's me at the end of my rant.
That's a good rant. I mean, I like. I'm hearing the king and the queen archetype, and I'm thinking, okay, so it's a left brain, organized, nurturing person. So they're probably they might be a little lower in openness, but high in agreeability, low in neuroticism. They might be more focused on a particular task or way of thinking, more linear thinking, but very, very kind and nurturing. I like that. I'm wondering how the big five would map onto this. I think there's a way to do that. The magicians is when I hear right brain, I think high trait openness, right? So it's very much like creative people are very, very, very high in openness, which makes total sense because they let new ideas in sometimes to a huge extent, right? Um,
I've tried
to a
hard
fault.
to map that. I thought
Oh, I'm losing you. Might just be on my end.
superior. Oh, wait, here we go. You got me now? I hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say about the Big Five. I forgot to mention that. I think it is the superior personality typing system. It really
Me
is.
too.
And it's predictive, it's reliable, it's very useful. And yet, what are its origins? Its origins are the interweb. It's
Okay.
pulled from the data of the web. The most frequently mentioned words and synonyms to describe emotions and thoughts.
Okay.
So it's quite valid, quite useful, quite repeatable, reliable, and it's superior. But its origin is not from theory. Its origin is from data mining.
It
It's
is.
mined from the internet. It's not created from scratch from a theory.
I wonder what they did though, because I know it's in the Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory, so it's gotta, and that goes back a ways. But I mean, I'm sure they update it, and it's more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, the data mining, and it's not as
I'm not
theoretical.
saying it's not useful. It absolutely is useful, but it's it's a data-based derived model rather than a theory. It's I guess you would say it is deductive reasoning instead of inductive reasoning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good way to put it. It's all
It's taken from
theoretical.
data. It's taken from
Yeah,
data, not from theory. And that has a lot of value to it. In fact, it's the superior system. But I instead wanted to start with theory and with scientific principles and then see what how that pans out
sure.
in data. Instead of starting with data and ending in a model, I went to
Yeah.
start with a model and look at how the data pans out.
Yes.
So I'm
No,
not sure it would perfectly overlay as a map. I'm not sure it would
no, it
map
probably
on.
wouldn't. I mean, I think conscientiousness goes very well with uh nurture. I don't know. I mean, if you're the left brain, I think conscientiousness is very left brain and openness is very right brain. If you took those two constructs, right?
Okay.
Think
Yeah.
about it. Conscientiousness is like,
Yeah.
I am going to be reliable. So you could say somebody who's very conscientious and very agreeable would be a king. And so I don't know, but you could have a conscientious artist. You could have an artist and an actor. Like look at Tom Cruise when COVID was going on. He kept his production going like the Navy, no pun intended, because that's Top
Right.
Gun's origin. But he's very work ethic heavy, very creative. So I think you're right. I think the big five, which to say for everybody watching, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeability, neuroticism, and neuroticism is basically negative emotion, like susceptibility to it, how easily you get worked up or upset. That is those five constructs, I think, would be tough to map onto just left brain, right brain, and nurturing versus
Yeah.
confidence. Somewhere along the way, they could intermingle in different ways in a kind of 5 by 4 grid. Somehow, I could tell ChatGPT to do something with that, but um, they're not. They would seem to not be a perfect fit. But there's enough to it that's I mean, I would say the big five actually goes more into like if somebody's really low in agreeability and high in neuroticism, that's almost like it's almost diagnostic and not just a fun thing of how do you love, but more like how functional are you. I think the big five is almost a functional uh measure as well. I don't know if you would agree, but you could score on it in ways that show that you live very well, and other ways that show that you might not be having that okay a time in life. To be blunt
I
with you.
actually think it's just through listening to you describe it and remembering the ocean, the five, terms.
Yes.
I think it probably is mixing what I'm old enough to have to be used to definitions of personality as being different from character.
Yeah. Okay.
They used to be called the character disorders when people would have what today they call the personality disorders.
I
They used to
like
be called
this.
they were called character disorders 30 years
Okay.
ago. And that was more accurate because character is about maturity level, not about style. Character is about maturity level, not style. Personality is your style. It's just your style. It's not how mature you are. So, and it's a useful distinction to
It is.
describe character and personality as being different because then you could analyze just personality styles that have, yay amount of character development within them, yay amount of maturity within them. And by the way, separate gender and biologic sex out of the whole picture. Keep that separate too. You can start to make this more granular and really analyze things better. So, what made me think that from what you were saying is conscientiousness to me sounds like being conscientious, being of good ethics.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a personality trait. That's a character trait.
Yeah.
It's a trait of maturity. We grow ethical through life's experience and over time,
Yeah.
making decisions. In other words, being conscientious has to do with our decision making style. And I leave decision making out of personality. Personality, in the way I define it, is intellectual style and emotional style, not decision making ability.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's character. Wisdom. You grow wisdom with age and experience. You don't need wisdom in your personality.
Sure.
Your personality is a style.
No, I think this is interesting. I agree. I mean, you look at
Neuroticism as well. Being neurotic in the old fashioned definition, like George Vaillant,
yeah,
Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud, I mean, that neuroticism meant immature of character.
sure.
It meant immature character development. It didn't mean a personality style. See? Using
Well,
immature ego defenses, for example, or primitive ego defenses made you neurotic, or neurotic ego defenses made you neurotic.
right.
But neuroticism isn't a personality. See,
You're
so I
it's
think the big five is great, but I think it's combining personality and character together.
I think that a lot of the Western world does that now. It's interesting you bring that up because that gets into here's where it gets really, really diagnostic and interesting of culture.
E-
So you get the
Emotional
phrase,
intelligence.
yeah, well, you get, well, that's just how I am, that refrain. You get the kind of person who
Yeah,
says, take me or leave me. If you don't take me at
yeah,
my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. So now I'm thinking, well, if you say it's your personality and you say it's this immutable, unchanging thing, then yeah, but really it could be character and it could be open to change. You can develop. I mean, it's interesting because developmental psychology could really be making a huge impact here culturally, and I don't feel that it does as much. I think that what is more in vogue, I mean, now maybe, yeah, in the advent of Jordan Peterson, but before that, I think it's a lot of like self care and understanding yourself. And I think, I mean, that's a good start. Validation is a good place to start, but it certainly isn't a place to finish with any therapy. That's my soapbox. I know we get on that, but I think you're totally right. Um, Conscientiousness is, let's see, behaviors associated with competence, order, dutifulness, attitude towards achievement, self-discipline, planning. I mean, and then people want to develop that all the time, especially if you hear people talk about ADHD, if they want to take meds or not, whatever. But they want to develop that ability to be more um, orderly and competent. And I mean, if you don't believe that can change, that's pretty abysmal. That's pretty negative. And then, yeah, neuroticism. It's so fascinating you bring this up.
yeah.
That's a big claim that it's conflating character and personality. It's probably true. I mean,
Well, it doesn't
I
have to make it
agree.
a bad thing. It
But
doesn't have to
isn't
be
that
a
what the
bad thing.
DSM? Yeah, isn't that what the DSM did has done though? It took away psychopathy, and now it's called antisocial personality disorder because you're not commenting on the person. It took away the idea of character, of moral insanity, and said this is the behavior. So we've taken out the elements of maturity and wisdom from our entire clinical mental health world. If you think
Well,
about it, we've
there's a
taken
lot of euphemisms, introduced by our culture that kind of takes away from the science. Since we're
right.
talking about data, data being a part of personality, intellectual style, we just
Yeah.
had a kind of an intellectual data genius just join us named Dane. So I just thought I'd
Oh, cool.
point Dane out. Kind of a
What up,
genius
man?
there.
Let me see that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Nice to meet you,
yeah.
man.
But
Very cool.
yeah. So Jeremy and I are talking about personality typing systems. We want to get away from randomness, like astrology and the color wheel. and just giving labels to areas of a spectrum of intellect and emotional style, and get more accurate about it all, and get away from hormones and neurotransmitters.
Sure.
So why would this be useful then, Jeremy, if we wanted to look at love and romance and matching people in a more scientific way instead of an old fashioned, in my gut, I feel you two would be a good match, like a Yento way. Um,
You're,
the future of dating sites and matchmaking, at least according to Alain de Botton, the founder, the philosopher, British philosopher and founder of
yes.
um, schooloflife.com. He believes that there's going to be like some computer algorithm, master algorithm, that's going to match people in the future perfectly, where we'll just find our ideal mate, we'll get married, don't even have to think about it. It'll
Right.
be set in stone and fine. But I don't think that will ever be exactly possible. I think it'll be a useful guide, because human beings also need our stories.
Right.
We need to discover the evolving story of our lives, just like you do in psychotherapy with your clients.
Yes.
We need to be excited by and surprised by the unexpected events of the stories of our lives that we then respond to and maybe take new directions on. And so just
Agreed.
simply having a dating algorithm that perfectly match makes people, it'll still seem robotic, and it won't feel full of uh, passion and meaning. Importantly, it won't be full of meaning in the way that discovering our own stories and how they blend together when we meet a good person for us occurs.
I mean,
What are your
you get
thoughts?
into there's a Black Mirror episode where there's have you seen that where
Yeah,
the
Black Mirror.
characters are continually in this world, like they're trying to determine if they're a good fit, and they go through simulation after simulation. It's kind of a fascinating idea. There's a big reveal, you don't know what's happening, and then it pulls away, and I won't spoil the whole thing. But um as you say this, I'm thinking, well, if someone joins this service at 18, as soon as they're able to legally as an adult, what does that say about? I mean, you could go one of two ways. You could say, okay, so from 0 to 18, you develop quite a repertoire of emotional experiences through parents, right? Through your peers, through your siblings, through the kiln that bakes you and cools you into a young adult, right? But and so Freud said like personality was developed by 5. Like let that sink in, because most people now would think that's insane. Yeah, yeah. So I think there should be some balance between tension and release for a relationship to be satisfying, she says. An AI that would find your perfect match would be unfulfilling because there'd be no tension. I agree. I was going to go there. I was actually going to
That's a
say
good point.
she
But
beat me in a good way.
that's also a problem
Yes,
of matching masculine and feminine instinct together
yes,
in the sexual attraction phase of human courtship.
yeah. The
Absolutely. An
male might.
algorithm could never do that. That's
Right,
right.
the male, well, so men already, it could be like they're losing the ability to go out and flirt more, and that's a whole interesting thing. But what I was going to say is basically, so if you knew your match was waiting at 18 and you had no tension to develop the ability to talk to the opposite sex, to know that that would yield possible dates, you could become very nonchalant, very under practiced in speaking to males or females, because you just know that you could match with one that's attuned to your personality at 18, like without the tension to grow and develop, even just with your peers that are opposite sex. I think we lose something if there's this sureness that something good will happen rather than that we have to grow to meet it. And I think men now, it's weird because there used to be this idea, and I'm sure you know, back in media from the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, meeting in a bar, meeting in public, hitting on people in public, flirting in public was a big part of life and popular culture and media. If you don't believe me, people watch movies before the year 2005. And then recently there's been kind of a narrative of insert, say blank is not a dating site, right? Or blank is not where you go to date. And so that's a very millennial and Gen Z view that dating needs to be kept to apps, and hitting on people or flirting in public is yucky and kind of weird. and kind of odd. But because I think in the past it was viewed like, well, guys are going to hit on women, and for women it was like, if I don't like the guy, I'm going to say buzz off. There was a sort of, and you could speak to more to this. I'm not calling you old. In different generations, it was like men and women talking to each other in public seemed normal, like the sexual chemistry. But for my generation and younger, there's an idea that it's almost creepy if you approach someone and there's sexual tension, because that's not the place for it. You need to get on an app and you need to throw your dice and hope it fits. Oh, Sophie thinks Substack's a great dating site. I haven't thought of
Oh,
that, but
that's
that sounds
yeah,
sounds like
right
a
there.
good
That's
article.
that's the maybe the quote of the year. I hope Dane saw that. Substack may be the greatest dating site ever for intellectuals, for sapiosexuals, right?
I got to put a
Um,
good picture up there of me without the, just not the fox, right? Good headshot.
it,
That's
it
funny. It
it
worked for me
worked
before.
for her before.
This is
So
good stuff.
let me speak to Sophie talking about tension in a relationship. Um, when we started tonight, and do need to end soon. When we
We
started, we were
we
talking
always get
about
on a roll. It's
personality
always good.
styles. I know it's always fun, but we started with personality styles, and I didn't give you context as to where in human courtship does that even fit. Well, I find the most useful tree trunk and tree branches model for human courtship really is Paul MacLean's triune brain model. The reptilian, mammalian, and higher brain areas of the mind, or software packages, if you will, make the most sense because they divide human courtship really into three acts of the play: the beginning, the middle, and the end. The beginning act is the sexual attraction. It doesn't mean you actually have sex, it means the tension builds. It's nonverbal, there's passion developing, there's keen interest without words even being spoken yet. The sexual attraction is the first phase. The second phase is the emotional attraction. That's really what I think we're talking about when we talk about personality matching.
Yeah,
It's
all right too.
friendship. It's friendship matching. It could apply equally as well to um, same-sex friends, classmates, coworkers. It doesn't even have to be romantic necessarily, but friendship matching is what involves the mammalian brain. The intellect is the highest level. That's the higher brain, and that's where partnership matters. So really, the three phases of human courtship are sexual attraction, emotional attraction, then intellectual attraction, or you could call it desire, love, and partnership.
Yeah, yeah.
These are the
So
three
Sophie
areas,
makes
and
a
that's
good
all I
comment.
was talking about tonight is the middle part, which is the mammalian brain,
Uh-huh.
emotional attraction part, the friendship or love. You could say love is not the same as desire.
No, it's not.
Passion and desire are not the same as love, and
No.
love is not the same as partnership. You could be great partners with a person that you don't love. You could love a person that would make a terrible partner for you. So
Oh yeah.
partnership, love, and desire are not the same thing, but they all integrate within a good, lasting romance, though. So Sophie is right, certainly about the reptilian brain. She's right about the lack of sexual attraction in an algorithm. She's right about that. But
Yeah.
that's not exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about what kind of partners would we make emotionally and intellectually if we teamed up with our opposite personalities that are complementary
Yeah.
to each other?
I get
That's
that.
the point.
Yeah, and she's
And the
saying for women,
variables
so
are left brain, right brain. The variables are left brain, right brain
okay.
versus well being and confidence, the emotional
Right.
axis. Those are the
Yeah.
variables, not serotonin, dopamine, testosterone, and estrogen. That's
Yeah.
mixing models yet again. You know how, Jeremy, this like puts, ties it up with a bow. We were saying earlier, what if the big five personalities are mixing personality with character?
Character, yeah.
Well, what Sophie's talking about is mixing personalities with sexual attraction, masculine and feminine instincts.
Yes.
Those
Sure.
need to not be mixed either. They're separate parts. of the mind, reptilian versus mammalian.
Right. She was saying also that it might be that for women, it's the other way a lot of the time. I think that what that means is instead of it being sexual attraction first and then emotional and then intellectual, it might be intellectual and then sexual. I've heard that. I totally understand that because she also responded to this article. Also, I need to send it to you. It's like most men disgust women, and it's the OK Cupid very ignominious, what is it, the um very infamous data from OKCupid of like women rating most men below average. You ever seen that data, that study from like
Yeah, that's
2020 or something?
well, and the book Dataclysm by Christian
Yes,
Rudder, who
that's
was one of the
exactly.
founders of OKCupid. Yeah, that's where
Yeah.
that's from. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, the idea that the physical is not what always gets women's attention, that's tough because the dating sites make it about that, and so you kind of have. Oh, and that goes down to evolutionary psychology of why men like do lecking displays. You've ever heard that term? It's like the peacock. It's like
Yeah.
dancing. It's like cultural rites of
Yeah.
passage, and so men
Yeah.
are very well suited to stay in their culture and become dominant. And women are well suited to travel and do many things that can be found attractive anywhere, which has been extrapolated to say why women love travel and men don't as much. You could go. Evolutionary psychology is like faith to an extent. You can kind of say what you want, and if it makes sense, it kind of, you know what I mean. I say that, and I love
It
evolutionary psychology, but there's so much that you can extrapolate that I've heard
it
before
it
from so many.
sounds right. It sounds right. Yeah.
Right. It's all if it sounds right with
Yeah.
Evo Psych. What are you going to do? Go back and talk
Yeah.
to a. The analysis article shows how much people don't understand how female attraction works. Yeah, I agree. I mean, apps are to an extent just attraction, like process attraction, like process meat. Like you have a shot that something is kind of working. So I mean, you have what you so much of a rat hole go down. I mean, everything's processed now to an extent. That's why like the IRL in real life stuff's coming back so hard as people have gotten online fatigue, I think. So yes, for me it's intellectual, Geraldine says. Well, God bless y'all because the state of discourse now is not always that great. So we're trying to bring it up. Very fun stuff.
Yeah. I think this could be for another time for us to discuss what came up from Geraldine and also from Sophie, that
Yes.
what if the female process of developing attraction is different?
Yeah.
It most certainly is. However, I'll just like preview one proviso to that, that I still think sexual attraction does indeed come first,
Yeah.
is that there is a mating dance that has to go on in every species, every animal species, and we are an animal species. When the female meets the male, she does certain things, the male does certain things,
Drop a
and it
handkerchief.
is sexual. It is not just intellectual. Maybe these things are running simultaneously where they start an interesting conversation, and
Sure.
that's where the female starts to get the passions going, but it still begins with the masculine feminine polarity, or nothing happens. Nothing will
Yeah.
ever happen sexual.
You could like reference
Nothing
a
will
Jane
ever
Austen
happen
novel.
truly romantic. Nothing will ever happen. They could remain intellectual friends or study buddies or classmates, but it never was a romance unless it began with a spark of attraction, of interest, passionate interest.
Yeah.
It began with that for them
Yeah.
both,
I
or
agree with that.
it never will develop. Maybe the
So
woman develops an attraction for the man over time, but he is long gone in his mind and heart. He will never be back. He will never be back. It's a dance for two, and the beginning of the dance is sexual in nature. It doesn't mean the sex act. It means passion and desire are at
yeah,
love at first sight. It's at the beginning.
I think yeah, I like what she had to say about elements of attraction that can't that can't be displayed in a photo with mannerisms and posture. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, also, this is really interesting, and this is for another time. Um, men smiling in dating photos was rated lower than them having like a neutral expression, or I guess maybe a half smile, um, which I think kind of makes sense. You know, the soy face meme with the guys going, it's like that's probably not attractive in a dating photo.
Uh-huh.
The
Yeah.
cheesy grin, I guess, is not, and that's very interesting because I think some evolutionary psychology stuff talks about like chimps smiling as like a submissive thing. Um, another rabbit hole to go down, but I think posture and facial expression and other things. It's interesting. I think those are actually the things that men are taught the least now in how to interact with women. I think everything's very androgynous, where you know men aren't really taught.
Hey, what does
Like it's not
Sophie
men
want to
talk about
fight about?
mystery. What?
What is it Sophie wants to fight about? Is it about
No, she doesn't want to fight. She's not
mannerisms
fighting. No, she likes
being
your
in a
stuff.
photo?
No, no, she's saying no. It's a really good
No,
point.
no, no. I know that and I get that. But I'm saying I have to fight on that point. Is that about photos and the man's posture? Or
Yes, it's that
is
you
that what you're
can't
referring to?
convey.
You can't see mannerisms. You certainly can't see the chemistry between people in a
Yes,
static photo,
that's what
or
she
even
said.
or
Yes,
even in a personal video, even in a one-way video, you can't see it.
yeah,
The
that's absolutely.
chemistry that happens has to be live in person between two people. That's what I'm talking about is the first phase of courtship. Because otherwise it's bland and neutral, and one or the other person relegates the other to the friend zone, to forever. We'll be friends forever. That's fine.
Oh yeah, she said
But
I'd
there's
have to
never going to
fight you
be
on that
anything
point.
more.
I like this. This is
Yeah,
funny.
that's what I
Hey, so
meant. Yeah.
Sophie, this is really funny. I actually told Dr. D before we hopped on tonight. We were on the phone. I was like, we need to get somebody to come on and fight with us, like play fight, and do get for views, like to get like
Oh,
how
she
people.
says I'm fighting that sexual attraction comes before anything else. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I totally, yep. I agree. I agree.
yeah.
Now
So there
for
you go.
women,
You're
now
right. I
for
didn't read her message before. I saw that I'm fighting. Now I saw it. You're right. Okay. Well,
now for women, might it be not mission critical? Might it be elemental that there needs to be some kind of conversation? Whereas the male maybe just needs the visual appeal. Maybe there doesn't need to be that much conversation for the male. But either way, they are
that's what it.
still desire. They're still both desire. And the evolutionary psychologists talk about this a lot about the male visual cortex being like supercharged by testosterone. You inject testosterone into a male or a female, they both become visually incredibly accurate with spatial recognition. So yes, males, you know, take it in with the eyes. Maybe females, to some degree, much more than males, take it in through the ears and want to hear the voice and hear the intellect and hear the conversation. But aren't we then mixing variables together? I mean, the only reason we would ever argue about any of this stuff is we're mixing character, personality, we're mixing phases of courtship, we're mixing partnership previews with sexual desire and attraction, we're mixing love with lust, we're mixing love with partnership. The whole point of having a courtship system is to telescope out the steps, even though
Yeah,
they often occur simultaneously. It's a finely oiled machine in the end, but telescope them out and you can see each little working part, what it contributes. So, anyway, my friend, I think that's got to be it for now. And I
that's
thank
all
you
she wrote.
all. Sophie sounds like a fascinating person, and
She's got a
Geraldine, we
good
know, is a
Substack.
fascinating person. That's
Yeah,
awesome. I want to dig into that. And thank you, Geraldine. You are a fascinating person. And thank you, Dane, if you're still around.
yeah,
Genius,
I think he is.
genius data person.
Because we've
Yes,
got six,
wonderful.
we've got the same people on that were on when he joined. Yeah, this is fun. We need to do one that's like a video where we could have a bunch of people on like a panel. I think we got to work up to that. Maybe do
Yeah,
some live stream. Or I'm on. I have followers on X, formerly Twitter. We need to really get on there and start hashing out too. I think that'd be so much fun.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We got to do like a round table.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
That'd be great. This is great. I'll see you later.
All right, thank you guys. Talk soon.